Alright, so now we will talk about the whole interview process when you walk in the room and what happens. We'll go to the questions later on. We'll just talk about the general part. We'll cover body language and what should be the general construct of your answers. What are the key things that you should focus on across the entire interview in terms of your answers, speaking, body language and everything. Alright. Say you walked in the room, right? You have been finally admitted. You walk into the room. Say, let's assume the worst case scenarios and all, or the most common scenarios. Say there is a table and a couple of chairs placed at the far end of the room. So you walk all the way to the table where they are seated, okay, and say there is a chair placed for you. And sometimes it may so happen for some reason. Earlier it used to happen. These things have, with God's grace, have actually become very less frequent nowadays. Because earlier people used to try such fancy things, all these MBA colleges. I mean, now they have realized with all the failed experiments that it doesn't really yield results. So they might place the chair at some distance from the table. And the logic earlier was to put you under some pressure or to look at your body language and all. So most of the colleges have done away with such tactics. They play it safe and simple. Even they don't want to take all these headaches. In case you come across a situation like this, one thing you are not supposed to do is to drag the chair back to the table. Because it has not been placed there by mistake. So wherever the chair is placed, even if it is a couple of feet away from the table, wherever it is, you have to sit there only. Alright, say you walked all the way to the chair. What is the first thing that you should do when you reach the chair? Yeah?
Should I sit down? Ask for permission.
Ask for permission to sit down. Any other answers? What is the first thing you do? You walk into the interview, you reach the chair.
Greet the panel.
The first thing you do whenever you come across someone is to greet. Just try to think of it. When you go to someone else's house, the first thing you do is namaste or hello or whatever. This is what you're supposed to do. The first thing you do when you reach their place, their home, is to greet them. Alright? Before you sit down. So coming to greeting, let's cover a few basic details just to avoid. See, these are the kind of things, these are more like hygienic factors. What I want to do when I greet them or when I sit down or when I do all these things is not to commit what is called a faux pas, a social mistake, a social error, an embarrassing mistake. I just want to be very safe and conservative in all these things, right? So greeting, what is your suggestion? What kind of greeting is acceptable or safe and all?
Good morning or good evening or...
Right. Ideally you should do that, but what if you mess it up? Say it's a little late in the afternoon, you've been waiting since morning and before you realize you utter good morning. And then you actually look at your watch, it's actually 4:30 and you, oh sorry, my mistake, good evening. I think, it doesn't really help you for the next 20 minutes now. So this is a safe suggestion. I'm just saying that you need to be a little ready with this. So before you go to the room, maybe you should bear this in your mind that you have to say good morning to all of them or good evening to all of them. And prefer good morning or good evening, avoid good afternoon and all. Alright, so if it's not morning, it's good evening, as simple as that.
So if it's 1:30 p.m, so what do we say?
See, as I said, it's either good morning or good evening, right? 1:30 p.m. is too early for good evening, right? So I would suggest good morning, something like that. Because see, the point is if you think only good morning and good afternoon, it puts you mentally in a safe place. You don't have to worry too much about what should I say when I greet them. Or maybe you can stick to good afternoon, right? If it actually you feel comfortable saying that. And how do you go about that? Good afternoon, good morning. Then who do you address this to? All the panelists who are seated, what do you add next to that? Good morning or good afternoon?
Sirs and ma'am.
Sir and ma'am.
What if there are multiple sirs and singular ma'am?
Address the lady first.
How do you do that? Good afternoon ma'am, good afternoon sirs.
Yeah.
Doesn't that make you sound more like a janitor or a waiter in a hotel rather than an MBA aspirant? Becomes a little too courteous, no? Becomes a little too complicated. What if the two ma'ams are situated at two ends of the panel? How do you go about greeting the females first now? Or if they are seated in alternative arrangement, like a cat question, how do you go about it now? So the point is, see, again as I said, my whole strategy for these things should be to be prepared to have it safe, which works in all situations, right? So what I would suggest is that, maybe something like this, good morning to all of you, good afternoon to all of you, good evening to all of you. Make a general eye contact with everyone, say it loud and clear so that it is addressed to everyone and be done with it. Rather than getting into intricacies of it and actually making some mistakes somewhere.
Sir, if there are two panelists, should we still say good morning to all of you?
Okay, I think then both of you should suit better, isn't it? In that case, I think there are two panelists. I see if the number is 1 or 2, I say if there is one panelist, I think better you don't say good morning to all of you. So I think if the number is 1 or 2, I think you should stick to good morning. If there are 2 persons, see, think of it in a general situation. If I come across 2 persons who I need to address, who I need to greet, I would say good morning. I think that should do for 2%. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening. When it is more than two, then it becomes a little more like a crowd. Then I become a little conscious of the fact that all of them have acknowledged my greeting. Then I start thinking about the title, sirs, ma'ams, all of you and all. So as long as it is two, what I would suggest is that stick to a very simple greeting of good morning, good afternoon, and be done with it. Again, the overriding philosophy here should be, it should be safe, simple, works in all situations, and does not occupy my mental space. Right? And I don't conduct an embarrassing social mistake. That is all that we have to worry about. Alright? Okay. Now when you greet them, let's come to the next stage. Now we are done with good morning, good afternoon. After that, do you expect a response? Yeah?
Maybe.
Yes.
Maybe is the critical word. Maybe, maybe not. It does not matter. So I think, since it does not matter, we should not even be expecting it. If it comes, it comes. Right? Okay. And what do you do next? Greeting done, now what? Okay, one more thing about greeting. Any particular way of greeting, how should we go about it? Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, sir. Is that preferable? How should I go about it?
Should we shake hands?
No, I think that is absolutely avoidable and not advisable at all. Keeping that distance as long as that the length of the table is actually preferable to you rather than them. So how do we greet them? What should we do? Any particular thing that comes to your mind that you should be very conscious of when you greet them? The first thing is, what do you prefer when someone greets you? You want it to be a little warm, isn't it? When he says good morning, he should mean the word good in the morning, right? How can he do that? Maybe a little smile will do, a little genuineness in the way you wish them, a little expression of happiness in a way that you've actually come for this interview. Almost your good morning should mean nice to meet you, happy to see you. So that will help. So a little bit of smile, maintaining eye contact, loud and clear. So these are small things that we should be aware of. It helps the interview start on a right note. Okay, all right. So now greeting done. What do we do next now? Greeting done, no response. We are still standing. They're looking at us. Maybe not looking at us, ignoring us, whatever. What do we do next?
Ask for permission to sit.
Yes, ask the permission to sit. Alright, again, like knocking on the door, I believe it's a rhetorical question. It may or may not come with a response. So you ask the permission to sit. Again, 99 out of 100 times they will grant the permission by some gesture, asking you to sit, or maybe even say, please sit down or something. In case they don't, you still sit down and not worry about the fact that they've actually not made a voluntary suggestion for you to sit down, right? So take it as an assent and sit down.
So what if they
After
charge
they
us
sit down,
telling us we didn't ask you to sit down, so I did sit down?
In that case, I think, if something like this happens, then maybe it was a deliberate strategy from their part right from the very beginning. In these cases, whether you sit down or you don't sit down, any which ways they have a strategy ready for you. Alright, so let's have a strategy which works in most situations, which for us is, we ask a question, maybe 1 second pause and we sit down, right? Irrespective of the gesture or response from them. And in case after that, say you come across a situation like this, you ask the permission to sit down, there was no response, you took it as assent and you sat down on the chair, which was there available for you. And then they say, we never asked you to sit down. How dare you sit down? Stand up. If something like that happens, which we'll cover in our stress interview part, you have to understand you are in for a rough ride. The whole idea of this interview perhaps is to put you under pressure now, which they would have done any which ways, whether you would have taken this decision or some other decision. What you have to understand is, what they say is not a response to your action. What they say is more or less pre-decided. So there is nothing you can do to apprehend it or stop it. What you can only do is respond to a particular question which is being offered to you. You cannot make them do something which you have already decided. So if they decided to put you under pressure, there is no action, which can avoid that. Alright. So for us, we should stick to a strategy for these simple things. We say, may I sit down, and we sit down. As simple as that. Alright. Once we sit down, where do we keep that folder which we are still carrying?
to the left side.
Left side
On
of
the
what?
table.
On the table.
Suppose you keep it on a lap.
Yes. See, one thing is that you put nothing on the table, which is the general rule for an interview. Table is precious. It's for the interviewers, their domain. You don't put your hand, you don't put your folder, nothing on the table. You can put any space that you find in. If there is something to keep your folder on your chair, you put it there. or maybe right next to the leg of the chair, or in your lap if you're okay with that. All these things are okay, no problem. Just don't put it on the table. Alright? And then just sit tight like you're supposed to. Okay. What if they don't ask you a question for the next 2 minutes? What do you do then?
Wait.
And it goes down to 3 minutes, 4 minutes, then?
Still make eye contact and wait.
See, the idea is if they take a pause or something, if they do it deliberately, is to put pressure on you. If they do it just by the way of things, reading forms or something, you just wait, sit tight, and don't restrain that urge to say something. Sir, would you like to know something? Sir, actually I can suggest a few questions. So restrain that urge to come up with these kind of gems. Alright. Let them, the ball should be in their court, let them start the game. Okay? You don't respond, you just respond to their questions. Just sit tight. And yes, though everyone advises that you should have a smile on your face, honestly, if you ask me, and I have taken interviews, after a point of time, it looks a little too cosmetic to me. So when you sit down and you have nothing to do except twiddling your thumbs and they're actually busy with their work, I think you can be natural. I'm not saying that you come up with a scowl or something, but you need not smile unnecessarily just for 2 minutes, while you're waiting. Alright? Okay. Any other questions in this part then? How do we go about it and all? No? Alright, let's come. Any questions? No? Let's come to the body language and all. Okay, let's make it a little quick here. Body language. See again, first before we go into the details of body language, let me make one thing clear as far as I am concerned. And again, this is coming from horse's mouth. I've had discussions with IIM professors who have taken interviews. Body language is perhaps the least of their consideration. Of all the possible parameters which you take into account when you go for an interview preparation, I think body language and all the associated things that we prepare for are perhaps the lowest weighted things in their assessment report. Earlier again I've heard rumors about it, and maybe some of them are true also perhaps, that they actually used to have psychologists sitting in the panel to assess every single movement and gesture and interpret them in their own ways. Right? But I think again, as I said, the general trend for last few years is that most of the colleges have done away with all these gimmicks and tactics, and generally professors, their very nature, the very outlook is that they have very little consideration unless and until they are communication professors. They have very little respect, very little time, very little space for all these things like body language and voice modulation and so. How do we incorporate in an interview? We'll learn, but it's not something we should become too conscious of. The content is the king. In fact, I would suggest you should all write this down. What you say is far more important than how you say. Content is the king. If you prepare for content, if you are confident about what you are going to say about your content and all, that will do. Okay, alright. But still we need to just have a few things clear about body language. Alright, say starting with eye contact. I'm sure all of you are aware of it, and this is a general practice also, that whenever you talk to an audience, which is an audience, 2 or 3 or more panelists, you always try to make eye contact with all of them. And this comes with practice. It cannot come suddenly on the interview stage. If you haven't tried it daily in your life, in your general conversation, every time you try to talk to a group of friends, if you are not used to, habituated to this, it will come very difficult. So what I would suggest is that right from today, from the beginning, every time you try to talk to people now in your social life, try to maintain eye contact with all of them. One. Okay?
Question.
Yeah.
If they've asked me a question and I have asked them permission to think about it for a while, where am I supposed to look and maintain eye contact still, because I'm thinking about it and it may...
See, eye contact is only applicable when you are talking, when there is a conversation going on, which means either they are asking a question or you are answering a question.
So when I'm thinking, can I look at the wall behind their back?
Yeah, you can look at the wall or whatever helps you think. That is far more important, because you have to come up with the right thought process and the answer. That is more important than being worried about the fact, where am I looking. See, again I would like to set the record straight here. Our primary focus should be on our answers, and all these factors should receive the least possible attention from us, particularly when we are seated in the hot seat. If we have to become a little conscious and prepared for it, it should all be before interview. And once we are done with that, we should go there and act as naturally, as generally as we do in our daily life. There we should not worry about fingers, toes, eye contact, body language, shoulders drooping and all. If we have to do that, we have to do that before the interview. Alright? Okay. So again, see, if they are asking a question, you should always maintain eye contact with the person who is asking the interview. But when you are answering, you try to address all of them, even the person who is sitting in far corner. who does not know why he's actually seated in the panel, but you try to maintain eye contact with all of them. Now you can't go oscillating like that, so with a little bit of practice you learn how to do it. And say if two of them are seated there, you don't need to actually ensure that you maintain eye contact with one of them. It should be in general direction. So you should maybe fix 3 directions: right, center, left, and you kind of move slowly over a period of time if your answer is long and all, and that will do. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
what if we are sweating a lot during the interview? In case my hands are sweating and I want to use a handkerchief at that moment of time, should I ask for
See-
permission or should I just straight take it out?
No, see, first question is whether you should ask for permission or not. There is no need to ask for permission. You can take a handkerchief and wipe your sweat. That is absolutely acceptable. Now, see, if you are sweating a lot, naturally it does not look very good because it displays nervousness and a little bit of tension, which I would say is not something that is unexpected. They are not used to the fact that students will be a little under the stress and all.
In case I have a condition like that, should I tell them should I tell about it to them? If in case they ask me question, are you nervous or anything?
See, if I just look at the situation from a very natural perspective. Now, if I'm sweating a lot and I know that it has caught their attention, everyone in the room is aware of it. Maybe they are not asking for it because they don't care for it or they don't want to embarrass you. And you are not able to tell them also because they have not asked for it. In those cases, I would actually prefer that I take the plunge and say it. Because then we brush the issue away. Then we can get on with the interview. Because if it's a medical condition, it's better for them to know. It helps your case also. And see, as I told you, it is not necessarily a situation where someone is after your life. So if you tell them, they feel more comfortable.
So even if they don't ask me anything or you're nervous or anything, I just wipe my sweat off and I tell them about it.
See, that is what I think, because just think of it as a conversation between two people. If one of them is in a slightly awkward situation, right, and the other one actually, the other one also becomes uncomfortable because of that. Isn't it? Someone is itching, or someone is sweating, or someone is a little uncomfortable in whatever way. The other person also becomes a little uncomfortable with all that. So he comes to know the reason behind the uncomfort of the other person,